Christmas has come early, Smackheads, and I do have a present for you. Season's beatings to each and every one of you delicious people. I am, as always, the Maniac Matt tenant, flying solo as the In Your House train thunders down the tracks and towards its final destination, which is far on the horizon. We've got so many of these to do for you, and possibly some NXT UK as well when it returns. I know it is returning, it's just a question of when it returns. As always, you can find me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can find Travis on Twitter at The Habiki TMD. Unionsmack.bigcartel.com. Grab an official shirt, official merchandise from all of Travis's shows. Show him some love. And Lulu.com, where you can purchase my first book, The Undertaker, A Trip Down Death Valley. And Book 2, NXT UK Year 1, coming your way next month at last. And when that's out, when that's in the shops, I am going to bed for 6 months. But we are here for one reason, and one reason only, and that's to get into some retro wrestling goodness. This week, our In Your House marathon continues as me and Travis endeavour to wade our way through every single In Your House there's ever been. And I think that probably includes the recent NXT one as well. We'll discuss that when the time's right. But we are at In Your House 5 Seasons Beatings, December the 17th, 1995, from the Hershey Park Arena in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And we are straight off the back of Survivor Series 1995. And, thank the heavens, we are done with 1995 with this event. Thank Christ, we're into 1996 next week in Your House 6. And we can all rejoice. This started out as a little project for me and Travis to go through the summer of 1995. And then once we'd done that, we decided that we'd do every single In Your House ever. Without really realising that we'd be stuck in 95 for quite some time. But this is the end. The end of 95 with In Your House 5. The dark match of this was Savio Vega defeated Bob Backlund. Jesus, where do they get these dark matches from? They must pick random names out of a hat of the most boring wrestlers they've got on their roster, and that'll do. That'll get the audience warmed up, no problem. Todd Pettingill narrates the intro video, which is very well done, by the way, I have to say. All the In Your House events, they're up to number 5, have had a really good hype video for the card and the main event. We haven't really talked about them that much, we've just gone straight in because, some of these events do destroy the soul of you. But hype videos, all very well done. And Todd Pettingill, I have to say, round of applause to you, sir, not that you're listening. You have done a sterling job thus far. Todd portrays the Hart family as a broken shell that is falling apart, and he delves, which is a nice touch actually, back into SummerSlam 1992 when Davey Boy Smith defeated Bret Hart for the WWF Intercontinental Championship, which makes Davey seem like a genuine threat to Bret's WWF Championship. And obviously, if you've not guessed by now, then the main event is Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog for the WWF Championship. One of my, if not my favourite Davey Boy Smith match of all time. But we will get there, Smackhead, we will get there. This show opened up with the 1-2-3 Kid and Psycho Sid versus Marty Jannetty and Razor Ramon. This was a continuation of the Razor Ramon 1-2-3 Kid storyline, which had actually exploded and resulted in the 1-2-3 Kid heel turn on the November the 13th Raw. Thank Christ, because this had gone forever. This had started to be built around King of the Ring when the 1-2-3 Kid was out with, I think it was neck injury, and Savio Vega filled in for him, and then Kid came back, and his relationship with Razor Ramon was fractious at best, and then it just started deteriorating. Kid cost Razor the the match against Dean Douglas at In Your House 3, and then they failed to capture the tag team championships at In Your House 4. Kid lost at SummerSlam 95 to Hakushi. I don't want to say it was very well done because it was very long-winded, but thankfully they pulled the trigger on this on the November the 13th Raw, gave the people what they'd been waiting for. 123 Kid was a special referee in a match between Sid and Razor. He helped Sid escape the Razor's Edge and then did a fast count, which awarded Razor the match. Following this, 123 Kid did what every directionless heel did in 1995 and joined the $1 Million Corporation. Of course he did. Everyone joined the $1 Million Corporation when WWF had nothing else for them. We are shown highlights before this match of the 123 Kid costing Razor his match at Survivor Series and Sid costing Marty Jannetty his match at the Survivor Series, which allowed the 123 Kid to prevail. Before this gets going, we're shown Goldust watching from the audience. This would help transition Razor, if you like, into his next feud. I will be honest, the match wasn't terrible, but this is a complete waste of your WWF Intercontinental Champion and should have been the blow-off match between Razor and Kid for the title instead. I think I said this in our review of In Your House 3 a couple of weeks back. WWF should have given us one huge 25-minute wrestling match between Razor and the 123 Kid and then had done with it. They'd spent so long hyping what turned out to be a tame heel turn that we didn't possess the patience, if you like, to sit through another 3 months of this story. And that's what we get, because the 123 Kid would eventually cost Razor Ramon the Intercontinental Championship at the Royal Rumble. And then they would drag this out into February 96 by, people had lost interest by then, by the time the Crybaby match came around. As for the match itself, they tried their hardest to tell the story of 123 Kid avoiding Razor as much as they could, because that's logical, He's the cowardly heel now. He wants to avoid the man he turned on, his former best friend. It all makes sense. However, this had a weird little moment, really early on actually, where Razor and the Kid are in there together, and Scott Hall barely touched him. In fact, he was trying to challenge the Kid to hit him when shouldn't Razor have just tore into him and just beat the shit out of him? I understand that Scott Hall was done with the WWF by the end of 95 and was just going through the motions, but make it look good. This is the payoff to a feud you've been involved in for the best part of 4 months, if not longer. Make everything feel special. But they didn't bother. They didn't bother, and that goes for Scott Hall a lot in 1995. He bothered against Shawn Michaels, and then didn't bother so much towards the end of the year. After SummerSlam, he was basically just phoning a lot of his performances in. The match is more than decent, though. Like I said, Kid and Jannetty really put in a good effort until we get to a very long split-screen segment in the match where we're seeing Todd Pettengill interview Goldust in the audience. And this interview is so long that it drains any interest from the match. And not only is it so long, but it's also almost inaudible. You can't hear what Goldust is saying. There should have been subtitles, or they should have turned his microphone up. But you're not quite sure who to concentrate on. You're trying to concentrate on the match on the left-hand screen, but then you're sort of intrigued by what Goldust is actually saying. So you're focusing more on him, and you miss a good portion of the match. They should have found a different way to do this. The long and the short of it is that Goldust gives Todd Pettengill a gold envelope to give to Razor Ramon. And then we are back to the match. And once we're back in full screen, it's exceedingly difficult to get back into this bout. Marty Jannetty tries his best, but he's lumbered with Sid, who applies the most boring rear chin lock that just kills the audience stone dead. The Razor Ramon hot tag gets a pop, and he does, to Scott Hall's credit, he gets a decent finishing sequence out of Sid and pins him with a second rope Bulldog. Very weak finale. I don't believe for a minute that Sid would not be able to kick out of a second rope Bulldog, but it is what it is. They wanted to get them back into the locker room and get their next match on. And then after the match, Razor goes to hit Kid with the Razor's Edge, but Sid saves him. So we will have to wait for another day to see Razor Ramon get his hands on the 1, 2, 3 Kid. We're taken back to the Superstar Hotline, where beautiful Sunny and Raymond Rougeau are manning the phones. Sunny is joined by Ted DiBiase, 1, 2, 3 Kid, and Sid, and she plays the part perfectly, to be fair. Raymond Rougeau, however, sits on the other side of the split screen and just stares inanely and creepily at the camera for the longest time. It's very unsettling and weird. Back in the arena, and the ring announcer announces that Buddy Landell is coming to the ring, but he doesn't. Instead, Jerry Lawler gets it from the commentary desk. He seems to have a present in his hand. It's wrapped in some white paper. And he introduces us to Jeff Jarrett, who's making his return to WWF after he and Rhodey held Vince McMahon up for more money after, I think it was the second first in your house. Second, I believe. Or first. Go back and listen to the reviews. We mention it on there. We're told that Jeff Jarrett is returning from his Ain't I Great tour. That's what they called the WWF Blacklist in December 1995, apparently. Lawler unveils a framed gold CD of With My Baby Tonight. Yes, do you remember that? The audience didn't. And presents it to Jeff Jarrett. It's amusing because when the camera goes in on this, this framed CD, it's meant to be all professionally displayed and everything. Yet there's one gold CD which is clearly a blank they've bought from some shop somewhere and just scribbled With My Baby Tonight on. And 2 pictures that accompany it. Both of them have been cut out of WWF magazine and stuck in with a Pritt stick. And I know this for a fact because I remember having the magazine that had those 2 exact pictures in. And not only the pictures, but if you look carefully, and the camera stays on it for a little bit so you can see it if you watch it. And I recommend you do because it's a good laugh. You can see the excerpt from WWF magazine written down one side of this picture next to Jeff Jarrett's image. It's just cheap as chips, as we say in the UK. However, Jeff Jarrett announces that he has a new tour on the horizon and then declares himself for the 1996 Royal Rumble match, but never actually competes because he will go on to have a singles match with Ahmed Johnson instead, and the foundations of that are laid in the coming minutes. The crowd loved this segment when it's over, by the way. Like this has to be 5-6 minutes of Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett talking in the middle of a pay-per-view, and nobody cares because they just want wrestling. Dean Douglas then comes to the ring and he's limping. So we know something's fucking wrong here. He gets in the ring and says that his back is injured, coincidentally, and the doctors have not cleared him to compete, but he has another student ready to face Ahmed Johnson for him. Now, what's confusing and illogical about this is that on commentary, Vince McMahon says that we're going to get Dean Douglas versus Ahmed Johnson. Yet, prior to all the guff between Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler, the ring announcer originally announced Buddy Landell. Now, I'm not sure whether this was a mess-up by Tony Chimmel, but it made them look stupid and not knowing what was coming next. However, Buddy Landell did come out to Ric Flair's theme music. Long robe, long blonde hair, pound shop Ric Flair, if anything. And the next match is Ahmed Johnson versus Buddy Landell. Buddy Landell on WWF pay-per-view in 1995. Are you fucking mental? Honestly, it's bad enough that they were pushing Ahmed Johnson as the next star, but fuck me, you couldn't have found someone with more star appeal than Buddy Landell. The majority of the people didn't even know who he was. Luckily, this was 42 seconds. This was, the epitome of a superstars match. Landell tries the punches, chops, kicks to no avail whatsoever, and Ahmed catches him with a spinebuster from the second rope and a Pearl River plunge for the victory. This was all about what happened after the match. Jerry Lawler calls Ahmed Johnson to ringside for an interview, but instead of interviewing him, ends up berating him and comparing him to Jeff Jarrett. Once Ahmed is distracted, Jarrett smashes him over the head with the frame twice, and it was a hard hit as well. You could see the grimace on Ahmed Johnson's face when Jeff Jarrett leathered him. It was a sickening connection. And then Jarrett assaulted him with a chair. It didn't last long. Ahmed hulked up, chased Jarrett up the aisle, and then they tussled like fucking schoolboys for the chair before Ahmed Johnson just basically gave up. Jeff Jarrett ran through the curtain, and Ahmed Johnson jogged to the curtain, stopped completely, and just walked through, as if the camera wasn't still on him. This would, of course, lead to Jeff Jarrett versus Ahmed Johnson at the 1996 Royal Rumble. Todd Pettingill is in the Superstar Hotline room with Razor Ramon. They talk about Razor defending his Intercontinental Championship tomorrow night on Raw against Yokozuna, because that's what everyone demanded. In 1995, everyone looked at a 600-pound Yokozuna and went, we really want him in a position where he could potentially be Intercontinental Champion. Fucking company. Then Todd gives Razor the gold envelope that Goldust passed off to him earlier. Razor reads the letter inside, which we never get to see, by the way. It's just insinuated that it's either a love letter to Razor Ramon from Goldust or it contains some adult material. And Razor storms out of the room in disgust. Next up is the infamous Hogpen match. Henry Godwinn versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley with Hillbilly Jim as the special guest referee. Now, this came about through months of Hunter trying to steal Henry Godwinn's slot bucket and failing. He even got slopped several times. They were on opposing teams at Survivor Series, and it all led to this. I will say before we start, this match isn't fondly remembered by WWF fans. In fact, I've seen it on lists of the 10 worst gimmick matches in WWF history, etc. And when people bring up the decline of WWF in '95, they point to matches like this. However, on a rewatch, watching it back now, it's actually not a bad match. Sorry, Travis. So Hunter does a great job of selling disgust as he passes the hog pen on his way to the ring. Like, he really acts this up. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Henry Godwinn's theme, I have to say, and I've said this twice, I think now, on 2 In Your House reviews, it has to be the worst theme in WWF history. It'd have sounded better had he come out to silence. The pig snorting noises and the woohoos. Just country bumpkin. Awful. And there's no music, it's just noises. It's terrible. So the rules of this are the first person to get their opponents in the hog pen wins. Simple. Match begins in the ring with Henry Godwinn throwing his slot bucket over Hunter, but he predictably misses. Hits ring announcer Tony Chimmel and about 5 people in the front row, so they got their money's worth. He ties Hunter into the ropes and shoves a big dirty handful of slop into his face. It's fucking vile. Looks awful. And you can hear Vince McMahon retching on commentary at this point. He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! Godwinn hits a nice headlock driver into the steps. A wrestling move from Henry Godwinn. I know I was as surprised as you all are. They finally work their way to the hog pen. They tease getting each other in. Henry Godwinn backdrops Hunter onto the side of the pen. And then Helmsley comes off with a nice flying elbow. It was the last thing I expected when they got to the pen. I expected a lot of brawling, a lot of muck, a lot of faffing about. I didn't expect a wrestling move off of a hog pen, and I'd seen this when I was a kid, and a few times actually in between. They go back to the ring, which really slows this down. Is that they should have kept it around the aisle and around the hog pen to build drama. Fight into the set. If you need to fight into the back, fine. But don't fight back to the ring, because they didn't really do anything in the ring when they got there. Henry Godwin did a nice, I think it was like a wheelbarrow facebuster. I was shocked by Henry Godwin in this match. 2 actual wrestling moves he pulled out. So, round of applause to Mark Canterbury there. Mark Canterbury being the person behind the Henry Godwin character. But finally, they're back at the hog pen. Hunter counters a slop drop by holding on to the guardrail. He does get slop dropped again outside the pen, but he climbs to his feet. Godwin lines him up for a clothesline, and Hunter backdrops Henry Godwin into the pen and wins the match. Unfortunately for Hunter Hearst Helmsley, after the match is over, Henry Godwin pulls him in and slams him around in the shit for an age. I think Godwin loved this. Helmsley, not so much. And I'm not even convinced it was real pig shit either, because when he's swimming about in it, and I mean swimming, slipping, everything, it looks like paste and Angel Delight. I know you have that in America, but if you think like the texture and the look and the colour of clay, it looked like that under the surface. So I'm not completely convinced it was pig dung. But obviously, if you know better than me, then drop it in the comments, because I'd love to know whether that was real. Can you imagine, getting to work and being told, yeah, you're going to go face first in some pig shit tonight, and you're not getting paid any extra for it? Of course you're not. It's 1995. This is the height of our creativity. Like I said, the match was fine. It's not fondly remembered, but it did a job. And it was actually a decent... We got some wrestling moves out of Henry Godwin. Any match where you get a wrestling move out of Henry Godwin has to be considered a success. We are taken back and shown recaps of Survivor Series. Most notably, Bret Hart defeating Diesel for the WWF Championship at last. And it was about time. It was about time that title came off of Diesel. He was stinking up the joint on top. Had some of the very worst main events in WWF history. They had to get that belt off of him, and not before time either. The video package then switches to Diesel going off the rails after Survivor Series, teasing a heel turn by attacking anyone and everyone he could find in the last few weeks. And then it takes a detour, because it takes us to the Raw, the infamous episode of Monday Night Raw actually, where Owen Hart hits Shawn Michaels with the enziguri, and Michaels collapses. I was utterly convinced as a kid that this was real. They did the angle where Shawn Michaels might have had a brain tumour, and he was out until the Royal Rumble, etc., etc. Completely convinced as a kid this was real. I'm sure a lot of you were as well. The smart fans will sit there and go, no, I knew from the age of 4 that this was all a work. Fuck off. And then the video package turns to Owen Hart taking credit for putting Shawn Michaels out of action and challenging Diesel to a match if he doesn't like what he'd done to his best friend. And what do we get next, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, at the height of predictability, Diesel versus Owen Hart. Christ. This was a complete superstar throwaway match. It should have had drama and tension to it after what Owen did to Shawn. The story was there, the chance to build something memorable was there, but neither Kevin Nash or Owen Hart really took the opportunity, and they didn't have time either. They had 4.5 minutes. More on that in just a little bit. Credit where credit is due. Kevin Nash played a different Diesel here, a more vengeful, a more evil Diesel, and he went straight after Owen, but it felt more like a squash match than a grudge match. Owen, he bumped for Diesel. He did everything he could to get Diesel over, but 1995 was not Owen Hart's year in professional wrestling. His treatment in 95 was staggering. Absolutely staggering. They needed someone like Owen, creatively, but they just didn't use him. He lasted 3 seconds in the Royal Rumble. He was hugely shortchanged at the first In Your House, given I think it was 5.5 minutes in a tag team match, which was rushed. Left out of King of the Ring, left out of SummerSlam, was given a terrible story in Your House 3 when he didn't turn up for his advertised tag team match with Yokozuna against Diesel and Shawn Michaels, and then just ran in at the end despite not being part of the match and was pinned. Left off of In Your House 4, in his own country, and didn't even get an entrance here. He was already in the ring, my friends, when this video package ended. What an absolute disservice to a great wrestler and someone who could have, genuinely helped this company out in the mid-card, upper mid-card main event scene in 95 when they really, really needed it. Diesel starts, this was purpose, like I said, elbows, huge sidewalk slam, and there's a moment here when Owen goes for the 10 punch in the corner, and Diesel throws him off so hard that he lands on his neck, and it's uncomfortable to watch when you know how Owen Hart passed away. Owen comes back with a spinning heel kick, flying drop kick, and then he goes to the leg with more interest, actually, than Davey Boy Smith managed In Your House 4. If you haven't heard that yet, I reviewed that last week for your pleasure. This is just very formulaic and unspectacular. The Diesel big boot, jackknife, pins Owen Hart, but then pulls out of the cover and decides to hit Owen again. Now, for some reason, it's not illegal, by the way, to pull out of a cover and decide to dish out more punishment to your opponent. The referee tries to stop Diesel. Why? Why would you... Well, illogical again. Diesel pie faces the referee and is disqualified. Owen Hart wins. Another awful ending. Diesel hits a second jackknife on Owen, and that is it. All done in 4 minutes and 34 seconds. What a waste. And I added this up, okay. Like I said at the beginning of In Your House 4, we do the work so you don't have to. I went through all of Owen Hart's pay-per-view matches in 1995, okay? And he spent a total of 54 minutes and 26 seconds on pay-per-view wrestling. That is disgusting when 22 minutes of that was at Survivor Series alone. When you take that off, that's less than 30 minutes on pay-per-view in 1995. That's basically a Bret Hart match. That's almost what Bret Hart spent wrestling Diesel at Survivor Series. Ridiculous. But you had so much talent in Owen Hart, and you didn't use him because you didn't know how, or you just didn't want to. But put King Mabel on top, by all means. Ted DiBiase is in the ring next as Savio Vega and Santa Claus give out presents in the aisle, and predictably, DiBiase is the Scrooge of this piece. He says that he can't think of a better time to illustrate that everybody has a price for the $1 Million Man, and that Savio Vega can be brought just like everybody else. He says that if he has the guts to prove him wrong, then he should get in the ring and bring Santa Claus with him. Oh, Santa. You can see the swerve signposted from the North Pole. Savio and Santa get in the ring, and after some truly painful dialogue, and honestly, you will cringe watching this. DiBiase asks Vega if he believes in Santa, and then Santa attacks Savio Vega with his sack, giggly, and aligns with Ted DiBiase. Another member of the $1 Million Corporation, because it didn't have enough people treading water in it as it was. Savio does chase him up the aisle and brawls with Santa, who is unveiled to be ECW's Bulls Mahoney under the gimmick Xanta Claus, and that's Xanta Claus. If you don't remember, don't research it and watch it. It was just painful for Bulls Mahoney, that character. It was terrible. recall it lasting beyond January, but obviously past Christmas, it was a redundant gimmick. And honest, Vince McMahon is particularly repugnant on commentary here. I mean, Vince McMahon was never the greatest commentary guy in the business anyway. He was always over the top and cheesy and phony. But here, he was particularly repugnant. And this was a time, the end of 95, beginning of 96, when Vince on commentary just didn't give two shits about anything. Royal Rumble 96, I watched it recently. Not to review it, but just in my spare time. And during the Royal Rumble match, Doug Gilbert, who USWA wrestler, I believe, he comes running down the aisle, and Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, who is on commentary with Vince McMahon, says, "That's Doug Gilbert. Didn't he qualify in the USWA qualifiers?" And Vince sits there, and his response is, "I have no idea." It's like, you're a colour commentator, my friend. It's your business. You should have an idea, but particularly awful. This whole little segment could have been cut away. It was sickening. Next we get a video package of the Undertaker versus King Mabel feud, which takes in Mabel breaking Mark Calloway's orbital socket for real. It wasn't a gimmick, and putting him on the shelf for months. And of course, the Undertaker's return at Survivor Series. Just imagine how big Nelson Frazier, who was the man behind Mabel and Viscera and Big Daddy V, etc. Just imagine how big his leg had to be to break another man's face when it was just all fat anyway. Ugh. Mabel's promo here is god-awful and factually incorrect. He claims that he was the first person to pin The Undertaker's shoulders to the mat. Wrong. That would be the Ultimate Warrior on a WWF house show, May the 27th, 1991, I believe. And that he was the first man to put The Undertaker out of action. I would argue that was Yokozuna at the 1994 Royal Rumble. But, history and facts. Who cares about them when you've got nothing else creatively? There was a good promo by The Undertaker at the end of this, I have to add. Casket match. The Undertaker versus King Mabel. This was the match they wanted to book it in your house for, but because of the injury couldn't. So we got that terrible Mabel versus Yokozuna bout. And the first thing I noticed about this was a very young Jeff Hardy carrying Mabel to the ring. Because, you want a man who is as thin as a blade of grass to carry, what is basically a land mammal to the ring. We're taken backstage where Doc Hendricks is in the locker room. And is he here with The Undertaker or Paul Bearer or someone watching the match out of interest because they want to challenge The Undertaker or Mabel? No, of course he's not. Because in 1995, Michael Hayes was nothing more than Michael the Merchandise Man. And he now tries to sell us WrestleMania the arcade game on every platform you can think of for the time. However, thankfully though, you don't get a free VHS with this one, so they must have shifted them all after A New House 4. I had WrestleMania the arcade game for PlayStation. I enjoyed it. I mean, I liked it. The graphics were really good. It's a game I'd be interested in getting my hands on again today, but I don't want you to sell it to me in the middle of a pay-per-view. Ridiculous time. They could have put this on before the match, but they put it on before The Undertaker's entrance. Baffling. Anyway, Mabel dominates the match with his power, but it's very rushed, and this is just over 6 minutes, so nowhere near the casket match we saw with Karma at SummerSlam, which went, I think that was 16, 17 minutes. Rushed, but, mercifully rushed, if you like. And it's not a complaint, because mercy killing for everyone involved. There's a moment when Mo pulls The Undertaker's body from the ring after leg drops and splashes, carries him around ringside and puts him in the casket, but predictably, The Undertaker gets himself out. The choke slam on Mabel looks great and is very brave of Mark Calloway, because once he's got Mabel up, then it's, anyone's guess where he's landing. And the match ends when the Undertaker hits a big boot to the rear of Mabel, which sends him sprawling into the casket. Mo gets in, eats a choke slam, and is put in the casket with Mabel. Taker then goes in, grabs the remains of the urn, which Karma melted down before SummerSlam to make into a necklace, and slams the lid on them both to win the match. And then after the match, The Undertaker ushered for the WWF Championship. So basically declared himself the next number one contender, as you do. This, surprisingly, wasn't bad. It was absolutely everything it should have been. Short, to the point, and feud ending. And it should have been the end of King Mabel too. I know Travis would agree with me on that. WWF saw how utterly awful he was in the ring and didn't need him on the roster, okay? The King gimmick failed. There was nothing more he could do with it. There was nothing more they could do with him. And they should have used this to write him off of television, but they didn't. He would return the next night on Raw to fight Diesel in an 8-second match, and then was lent to the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico before being brought back for the Royal Rumble match in 1996. And after that, he was gone. He was gone to the USWA, and he did a job or two in Japan as well. It wasn't the last we saw of the King Mabel character in WWF, sadly. He would return on the July the 6th, 1998 Raw as King Mabel before transitioning into Viscera. Let's just forget Nelson Fraser's career. You know, past babyface Men on a Mission, because it was just hideous. We are taken backstage to Jim Ross, who is with Jim Cornette, Davey Boy Smith, and Diana Hart Smith, or Smith Hart, depending on what she fancied that day. Before anyone talks, we're again shown the British Bulldog defeating Bret Hart at SummerSlam 1992 for the Intercontinental Championship. And they keep ramming this down our throats. And I'll be honest, I'm glad they do, because it gives the main event a special feel. You know, the feel like we could see a new WWF champion crown. The Bulldog did it once. And, you know, he could actually do it again. Jim Cornette, love him or hate him, his promo here is nothing less than masterful. He goes into how Bret has always been jealous of Davey Boy, and how the Hart family have always preferred and been more proud of the Bulldog than Bret. Just a promo that enhances a match greatly. Managers today could listen to this, take note, and learn something. Bulldog then speaks as well and says that Bret will go down to the man he's never beaten. Short, but to the point, and again very well delivered. You know, Bulldog was on fire with his promos in the latter part of 1995. Then we're taken to Bret Hart, who says that he's had to live with SummerSlam 92 all these years, and says that tonight the excellence of execution will shine like never before. WWF couldn't have done better with this if they tried. Yeah, harking back to SummerSlam, that the Bulldog had beat Bret, and Bret had to live with that for years and years, like for 2-3 years now. It was almost like a focal point. Like, the match had a story to it. Like, Bret had to get redemption for his loss at SummerSlam, and all credit, because this was excellently pulled off, excellently executed, one may say. Don't worry, I'm going soon. And now, the main event, WWF Championship match, Bret the Hitman Hart versus the British Bulldog. And like I said at the top of this show, this is, if not my favourite, then one of my favourite British Bulldog matches of all time. It's stunning, and it shows completely what Davey Boy could do if he wanted to. And this time it wasn't all Bret like it was at SummerSlam 92. As far as one knows and can tell, you know, Davey wasn't on anything before the match. He was coherent. He wasn't smacked off his tits. And I would say, and Travis might argue with me, you might disagree with me as well, this is the best match of WWF in 1995. This for me is better than Shawn Michaels versus Jeff Jarrett. Better than Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon in Your House. It's just absolutely fantastic. If a match was going to get 5 stars in WWF in 95, this would be the match. And it was a match where both men trusted each other completely as well, and they had to for it to work like it did. It's a slow burner from the outset. We're told, actually, The Undertaker will face the winner at the 1996 Royal Rumble, which is a shame because it sort of takes the mystery out of it. You know there's no real stock in the Bulldog versus the Undertaker at the Rumble, so you know Bret's going over. They should have saved that for the end, I think. There's a lovely sequence at the beginning where Bret targets the arm and the Bulldog tries to escape using every method he knows how to. Technical brilliance here is undeniable, and the selling from both men is just a pure masterclass. It eventually spills to the outside. The Bulldog hits Bret with a clothesline into the steel steps, busts Bret wide open, and he bleeds like a pig all match. His selling and his dedication, fantastic in absolutely every way. The Bulldog hits a stalling suplex and a bow and arrow hold, which Bret turns into a sharpshooter. Phenomenal. The drama and tension builds and builds and builds. Bret Hart hits a German suplex for a near fall. The Bulldog catches Bret on a rope-assisted bomb to the outside, nails him with a running power slam on the arena floor. The Bulldog takes up the protective mats on the outside. Bret reverses a suplex into the concrete and crotches the Bulldog on the guardrail. By the end of this, both men's attires soaked with blood. It's a wonderfully gory sight. Bret flips the Bulldog into the corner. He bounces out backwards and lands on his head. That's a homage to the late Rollerball Rocco. Near falls, reverses until Bret finally wins with a La Magistral cradle. I'll be honest, the end was flat, but the match was so good it can be overlooked. This is an instant classic, and I urge you to go out of your way to watch this if you haven't already. If you have, go back and rewatch it. This blows anything a Kenny Omega can do out of the water. And that's not a cheap shot at AEW, that is just the absolute truth. This had 2 dark matches on it after the show went off the air. Goldust defeated Duke the Dumpster Droese, and an 8-man tag team match. Barry Horowitz, Hakushi, and the Smoking Guns defeated the Body Donners, Yokozuna, and Isaac Yankem. What a team that was. Following the event, we were treated to In Your House Extra, where Todd Pettengill interviewed The Undertaker and Paul Bearer about The Undertaker's WWF Championship Challenge at the 1996 Royal Rumble. Before he got too far in, Diesel came bursting into the locker room, accused The Undertaker of stealing his championship match, said it should be his shot, and this would lead into their little coming together at the Royal Rumble in January, and of course the culmination of their WrestleMania 12 match. Many will say this was a one-match show, Bulldog Bret Hart. But in truth, this was a pretty good In Your House, and it was obviously made all the better by the main event. The opening tag match was mostly watchable, apart from the little interjections of Goldust. Hog pen match is better than anyone remembers, and the casket match, everything it needed to be, in my opinion. The only things we didn't really need to see were Owen Hart and Diesel, and Ahmed Johnson and Buddy Landell. You could have found something else for Owen to do, or given the main event the 5 minutes that both of their matches took up. Plus the Jerry Lawler, Jeff Jarrett thing, which led into the Ahmed Johnson match. Apart from that, very good In Your House. I do recommend you watch it if you've got the time. Spectacular main event. Cannot sing its praises enough. For me, better than SummerSlam 1992. And that's it, my friends. Thank you for joining me once again. It's not been bad, has it? I'm sure you're getting used to me, or will get used to me being solo for the foreseeable future. As always, on Twitter you can find me at The Perfect Tenant. Go and give Travis some love at the Habiki TMD. Unionsmack.bigcartel.com. Grab a shirt, grab some merchandise from all of Travis's shows. And Lulu.com, where you can purchase my first book, The Undertaker, A Trip Down Death Valley, and my second book, NXT UK Year 1, will be available from the same site next month. Fingers crossed. Like I said, thank you very much for joining me. Next week, we go to In Your House 6, February 1996. But until then, cheerio, mates.
With a country boy, a country boy, a country boy. If you go messing with a country